Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thank you all for coming here today. My name is Sri. Just to introduce myself, yes, I'm working currently at Spotify. I just successfully finished my first week. Yay. Before that, I was working with Skyscanner up in Edinburgh in Scotland. And that's whom all this research has been done with. And before that, I was here again in London, working for a social network, capital markets, defense industry. But throughout the experiences, data has been core to every job I've done, and so has programming. So it was inevitable that I went into data science. So how many of you here know what Skyscanner is? Awesome. This is really cool. I love it every time I meet anyone and they go, oh, yeah, Skyscanner, we totally know that. Expedia, what's that? So Skyscanner, for those of you who don't know, is a travel search site where you can get great prices for your flights, hotels, or car hires. And they have over 70 million users every single month. And the concept of multi-touch attribution is a really important one for them because they're very much an e-commerce industry. But I'll explain why it's important in a second. So just to give you an overview first, we'll be going through what multi-touch attribution is. So if you don't know, don't worry about it. And then some of the key challenges around multi-touch attribution, which is to do with the training data. And then we'll talk about the solution that's been designed, which is a simulated training data environment. And so most of this talk is predominantly data science heavy. We won't be looking into the code, but it's getting you to think about these concepts in a new perspective. So let's begin. So for those of you who would have seen The Hardest Hour, would know what a great performance Gary Oldman made of Winston Churchill. Well deserving this year's Oscar for Best Actor. His shiny new toy, which he seems to be really attached to. Now, when we think about who in Gary's life gets credit for his Oscar, there are a few ways to think about this. So you could say, right, let's give credit to the last person who had something to do with his win, the director. Or you could say, let's give his mum the credit. After all, if it wasn't for her, she wouldn't exist. Or you could say, well, the dad certainly had something to do with his existence, so you've got to give him some credit as well. So if you want to keep the peace, you could just say, let's just give everyone even credit. Now, but that doesn't necessarily make us any smarter. So now we could say, okay, let's give the last person a little more credit and the first person less. At this point, we're designing an algorithm, but still quite making up the rules here. So instead, what we really want to aim for is this. Custom values that for the various players, which is hopefully a true representation of their contribution to the scenario. And this, in effect, is the attribution problem. And you'll see this in a few different forms across the e-commerce industry and in other situations, like when it comes to Oscars. But this is what the industry is trying to achieve today. And this is, again, a storyline from Segment.io, who did a great job of it, so I highly recommend you read their blog as well. So where do we see this situation really occur in e-commerce? So when you think of Netflix, a whole load of amazing content. If you're anything like me, you can't go a day without it. So when we think about all the various content, what kind of content is really keeping users coming back? Is it the Netflix originals? Is it the BBC productions like Sherlock or Extraordinary Homes? Or is it the more cutting-edge stuff like Black Mirror? Who wouldn't love that? So what kind of content is it? Or is it just the classic shows like Friends, which people don't mind watching for like the 100th time? So where should Netflix really be investing to get more content to keep you coming back. So this, again, we see a situation like this with Amazon. Again, tons of different products. They started off with the books, but now they have music and video and the popular shopping. But even in shopping, you have different kinds of products. You have everyday products like groceries, or you have small tech, and then you have big ticket items. So which one gets you coming back? Is it the big ticket item you buy really what's bringing you back? Or is it the feasibility of getting everyday small products as well that makes your life easier? And again, you see this with Spotify as well, a whole lot of amazing music, but everyone's really different. So you see the music surface in few different styles. So it could be your mood playlist, or it could be discovery playlist, which is more tuned to your taste, or just the classics. Maybe you just want to have a platform where you could just go see what's popular in which country, classic charts. That's it. So what kind of music is, again, making that impact? So in all these scenarios, we're seeing multiple players, and we're trying to figure out who gets how much credit. So now we see how this comes across in the marketing space. And this is where the attention is of the e-commerce industry significantly. So I've tailored this use case particularly for Skyscanner, but it's generalizable to any e-commerce industry. So think about, say you're on a social network and you see an ad for an article that comes through which says, the 10 places the Brits are bound to be this year. And you go, okay, what is this? Okay, let me go check it out. Where are they bound to be? And you just kind of exploring what's happening there. And you see maybe Budapest, and you go, Budapest? Okay, I didn't expect that. Now you're just exploring the idea, no real intentions of travel or booking. Now, from there, a few days after or a day after, you see, again, Budapest kind of come up in different contexts, and you go, now it looks like I see Budapest everywhere. Okay, let me go read this other article about to do cool things in Budapest. This time, it's not Skyscanner article, just an article by a blogger. Now, as you're reading the blog, to the right, you'll see an ad which says, hey, Skyscanner, remember us? Do you want to see what the flights are, the prices are to go to Budapest maybe this weekend? And you go, yeah, why not? Let me just explore it. I've never really considered the option. Then a few days go by, and you've been talking to your friends about Budapest or your family, and turns out this might actually be fairly interesting. So you wanted to share that article you read a few days ago, but you don't quite remember that company's name, Sky something. So you go, okay, let's just ask Google. So ask Google, 10 places Brits are bound to be this year. And organically, you get like a whole load of results, and the top one is Skyscanner. So you go take the link, share it across, spread the word. Okay, now the pot's brewing. So you're actually thinking about Budapest and a holiday. It's all coming together. And it's been a really long winter, and you want to get away on a holiday, be it to Budapest or another sunnier place. So at this point, now you and your mates have decided you definitely want to do this, and you just go, right, let's just go to Google, ask for cheap flights to Budapest, see where it goes. So you do that, and this time, as you get the results, at the very top, you get some results which say ad, and one of it is Skyscanner, cheap flights to Budapest. And you go, that's what those guys are. I almost forgot about them. They were pretty decent, so let me just go and check it out. So you come back, one final trip to finalize your prices, and this time you've heard of Skyscanner a good few times, so you just come there directly and book your flight. Now this is a multi-touch situation that in the e-commerce industry. So which of these points gets the credit for that booking? So the industry norm is to give the last one full credit. Now, in this situation, since the last one was you directly coming to Skyscanner, when you look at the financial reports, that doesn't seem quite right. We need no marketing. People are just coming directly. Okay, so the rule, they have tailored it a bit to say, give the last paid touch point the full credit. Now, this teaches us a little bit more about the situation, but not enough. What about the other 3 touch points? They get no credit whatsoever. And the industry is well aware that this is not ideal. What we ideally would like to see is something more like this, where the credit is distributed amongst all players. And this is where we can actually start strategizing and seeing what's happening, how much investment you can start making in the various touch points. However, the industry is still stuck at this because we didn't have the computational power or big data to enable us. So now that we have those, what can we do about it? So now we come to designing a solution. So the first thing always to do when you come to designing a solution is start with the simplest thing. So the simplest thing would be to just give everyone even credit, or give them by time decay, or custom rules. However, we know we can do better. So let's take that 70+ million users' data, study it, understand what's working for the users or not, to design a data-driven attribution. So now when we come to the data-driven attribution, we still have many choices in the industry out there. But some which have really stood out are 2 methods. One is Markov chain attribution, where you basically study the various life cycles of the user and design that into a probabilistic graph, and now say, I remove channel 1. What is the loss or the impact in terms of conversion? And this is the Markov chain attribution. And then there's a very compelling competitor, which is the Shapley value attribution, which is a game theory approach, where you say, let me consider all the different situations the channel has been seen in, just seen in. We don't care about the sequences. And average out the payoff it would receive in all those scenarios. So computationally, it would seem like Shapley value would be easier to implement than Markov chain. However, Shapley value does well up to like 10 to 15 channels. After that, the payoffs per channel get really exponentially complicated to compute. So Markov chain, though initially a bit more cumbersome to implement, scales really well. Now, we have some strong approaches, both with its pros and cons. However, we don't know still the answer to the key question, which is, which is the best method? Which is the best method for the problem of multi-touch, as well as for Skyscanner in particular? So we have the data-driven approaches, we have the rule-based approaches. Everyone deserves a fair chance at winning, but we need a way to tell which is the best solution. So now we have the methods ready to train. Where's the training data? So let's take a step back and take a look at a typical machine learning problem. Say, houses in San Francisco, houses in New York. And we have some attributes there about the houses that don't quite give away which city it's in directly. And now we need to design a classifier using a training method to predict the label of the city. So clearly, we have a goal, we have a map, and we have a route that's going from our current position to the goal. And hopefully, it's the fastest one. So thinking about it from this perspective, when we take a look at multi-touch attribution, we'd see that we have the multiple different approaches we just discussed. When it comes to where we stand, we know that because we have tons of user data now to understand the user flows, the marketing channels, the sequence of events occurring, and so on. However, when we come to the goal, we have no estimates of the channel. We don't actually have the actual values. So what do we do with that? We don't have the actual values because those values are hidden in our real world. They are what are known as latent variables. Now, latent variables, we can't observe directly, but we can observe them through byproducts. So when you think about, say, the value of your university degree, or courage, or your health, this is where we cannot observe it directly, but we can infer it by byproducts. So for a university degree, it could be the kind of job the candidate gets, or the kind of place they live in, or how much they earn. For courage, making a daring leap, or getting the courage to speak up. Or with health, putting your body to the test to see what you're capable of. Your blood pressure, your fat levels, and so on. So even mathematically, we have such variables, and one such is multiplayer payoffs. So in this example of the Oscar, we don't know that the director should be getting 45% credit or the mom should be getting 5%. These are just estimates. And similarly for the marketing channels as well, as labeled there, these are hypothetical values. So what we really rely on is the knowledge of our field experts, in this case marketing experts, in order to understand what would be the payoffs for the various channels. Ideally, what would happen is that we would be able to keep everything still, change one channel's perspective, and do an A/B test. But this, if anyone has been working in the marketing scene, would know that is really not possible. First of all, marketing is happening off your site, and on top of that, it's a very dynamic environment. So business strategy is actively changing, there are so many variables out there that you don't control, reason why it becomes extremely challenging to try and understand the real value of these various channels. So that's why we really need our field experts who've been working in this industry for years and understand the value of various channels through their experience. So we could say, right, brilliant, we have a gap, let's plug in our experts, and now we have a closed form problem that can be solved. However, even with our experts' presence, we wouldn't be able to say how much a method is better or worse than another. It wouldn't be possible for them to say, okay, it is 10% better, or 1% better, or 7.5, right? So it's far too much onus on the expert, to try and think of all the different variables that could be potentially impacting the situation and then make that decision. It's far too much onus on one expert or even a group of them. So this is where we've designed a solution of simulated training data. So what we do is create a simulated marketing environment where we take all these expectations from our experts as well as the data to capture, and then we start simulating different goals where we can start training. So to understand that a bit better, when it comes to the expert, again, key expectations and the main one, which is the estimated goals. So we can say, right, marketing channel values, let's put that in. And there are other assumptions like, say, brand advertisement adds value, but not immediately, but over a long-term window. Now, that is something we, again, need to understand assumptions like this from our experts. And again, we can get the data to support that. But these are key factors we need to make sure we incorporate into any paradigm that we're creating. And similarly, we can take the known data traits we see in our big data and add that in. So we could say, right, distribution of the various marketing touchpoints. First, initially, top level, let's make sure that's all right. And these are the results actually we had, where the blue one here is the real data, and the orange one is the simulated data. I did have to abstract out the axes, unfortunately, though I absolutely hate unlabeled axes. And then we have the distribution of the various marketing touchpoints. So now that we got the overall expectation set, now let's go in and understand what kind of distributions do we see for these various marketing touchpoints, marketing channels. So do we see an alpha distribution or a beta? Is it normal? Is it negative binomial? And we can do a bit better. Rather than just say that's the distribution, we can actually tune it a bit better to say how exactly that would look like. And then we go from a user's perspective and say, right, now let's make sure that the expectations on what you see for the first touch point or the second are set. And then finally, again, from the channel's perspective, let's make sure that the key metrics we know of as of now, such as session, conversions, conversion rates, all of those expectations are as required from the various channels' perspectives. So these are the key perspectives we've used to create the simulated marketing environment, and you could do the same thing. So now that we have the simulated environment, we know what is our environment, what kind of features we have. We know what is the goal we're trying to aim for, and we have the various different approaches that we can start working with to aim for the goal and optimize this. So we can start comparing the different methods, and once we know which is the winning solution, start actually tuning it to make it more accurate. This, again, would be exceptionally hard if you didn't have an accurate way to measure this, and rather depended purely on, say, an expert. So now, when it comes to the results, again, just another point. For the simulated marketing environment, we've designed this and tailored it particularly for Skyscanner. And even in doing so, this approach is quite unconventional. So you'll see a lot of researchers working on estimating latent variables, and this is not the traditional approach taken. However, we wanted a pragmatic approach with which we can work and make better, but our main benefit, what it's doing, is taking all the expectations we have in our mind and putting it into code, somewhere we can set the expectations, evolve it over time, make it better as we get to know our reality more. So this is very much like as an MVP that we improved on with a few iterations. And as we learn more about our reality, we start putting those expectations in. So the results for multi-touch attribution, again, would be focused for Skyscanner. So with all the various methods, now the simulated approach, we can see that the best solution has a 90% accuracy in estimating the simulated marketing channel values. And here we see the top results. The best method, actually, yes. So our current best industry approach is last touch attribution, and that's where it is at the third point. And our baseline is even touch, which is, again, just giving whatever is seen the most, highest frequency, more credit, right? And then our best method is has been given a code name Z, because it's proprietary and I can't reveal that. However, we see that even the best method is 10% better than the baseline. And what's really interesting is also that this is the first time we can see that even touch, which is our baseline, is 2.69% better than last touch, where the industry is at. So this, to me, was really interesting. And if there's anything I'd like you to take away from this talk, it would be this one slide. The ability to clearly measure and see where the various methods stand has been exceptionally useful. And this has really helped us to realize where the various methods stand, what's good for us, and how to actually make that more accurate. And also that 2.69% is your compelling argument that you should be moving more towards data-driven solutions than to another rule base. And it's, again, only like 2.69% better, but that, again, is fairly compelling. Have we been using the wrong rule, even though we had the choice? Have we been using the wrong rule all this while? And what's really comforting to know is that the current best data-driven method is much better than the last touch method. We're not going for 1% or 2% accuracy. It's 10%. So now you guys could ask me, what if the channel estimates are wrong? Simple as that. Maybe it's not meant to be X, but it's meant to be 100 times that, or maybe 1% of that. What then? So, good question. And what we could do, again, is leverage the simulated marketing environment, where we could put the best solution, along with its competitors, under the test. So here, we have the ability to paint different scenarios. Now that we put all the different variables we know are key. So we design stress testing scenarios under 3 key themes. 1, let's just change the probability of the channel ever being exposed to the user. 2, the probability of purchase. Maybe we've been saying that the purchase order is ABC, with A having the highest conversion rates, whereas it's supposed to be CBA. So we could do that. We can paint that scenario, add it to the stress testing. And finally, the one where we fluctuate relative touch points. So earlier I mentioned how you have advertising where brand advertising has an impact at a later date. Here we could say, you know what, brand advertising doesn't have impact at a later date. It just is what you see on that day, and that's it. So let's paint that scenario, or that the brand advertising doesn't have a long enough tail, and actually we think it's a few days, whereas its impact lasts a few weeks or to a year. So we paint these different scenarios and then put it to the test. And what we see is, as we see here, so how to read this chart. So if you're close to the goal, most accurate, you'd be here to the center, right here. Whereas if you're overestimating to the goal, you'd be to the right. And if you're underestimating to the goal, it'd be to the left. And the scores here are the average per channel in the 20 different scenarios. And I've just shown like the top 5 methods. Again, we had to censor the results. But the method Z we just saw previously is the one in green. So when we see here what method is winning the most, I've just put little stars to make it easy to read. In most channels, it's the green method that's winning throughout, but not in all. And where it's not winning by a very small margin. That's why overall, still, it's the best solution to adapt to change. So this is where we now have a solution that is 90% accurate and the best at adapting to change. And now we come to the part of applying this to production. So we've learned from a simulated environment what method to use to design a solution, and what particular tunings as well that would be most ideal. And now we can apply the same tunings with the same method in reality in practice. So for the simulation stack, we've taken Skyscanner data to understand the attributes of the various channels and users and so on, and designed all those with those expectations purely in Python, thanks to the n number of libraries we have, to produce the simulated values. And for the production stack, we have, again, Skyscanner data, but all the entire implementation has been done for the winning solution with the tunings, all in Apache Spark. And I absolutely love Apache Spark. It's made my life really easy, and I could do a whole talk on it. So now we have the final results for multi-touch attribution that the team can start using and implementing it in practice in order to test out live to see what's happening. And as we learn more about our reality, we start placing those expectations in the simulated data. Thank you. In conclusion, so we've been able to understand the accuracy of different approaches, comparison of different approaches, tunings of the different solution, stress testing the solutions, and ease of production. And this approach has been really invaluable to us. So thank you so much. Here are all the links of the content and the images. And thank you to my Skyscanner team that have made this possible. It's been really exciting to work on this. If any of you are interested in the slides, I have the link right there. Feel free to have a look and let me know if you have any questions. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question. Do you have also like real results? Because what I'm asking is those 90% upgrade or better results are only because of the simulation. And when I'm seeing like a little bit hook in this, that's you were computing the same, I don't know, let's say a conversion rate of each channels.
Yeah.
But those channels acts differently when you put like more traffic into it, like when you are struggling with saturation of the channels. So it's like it could be a little bit tricky to deal with it. So if my question, do you deal with it or?
Yeah. So no, that's a very fair question, and this is why we also use the stress testing scenarios to kind of simulate that. But you're right in that you can't really expect the saturation level unless you put it into practice. So that is what Skyscanner is actively looking into now. But as you can imagine, to understand the saturation levels, you need to run the test for a long time in order to get that feedback, at least a good few days, or even weeks. So that's where we created the stress testing scenario in order to get a quick feedback so we can actually start tuning it a bit better. And then once it's ready, we're implementing it now in production. But now we are still in the process of testing it out and validating it, which could take a while because it just can't be in one test that you do and it's like, all right, done. It's a done deal. It's going to be taking a few good phases of it to test it out and understand how, if it's actually working. And in that, as you might imagine, it's not easy to run a A/B test in the marketing space. So again, there are challenges with that, and we have a really interesting approach to deal with it. So it's happening. However, those results, I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't come out for like a few months until we are conclusive. So that's actively happening. So I would say you should definitely watch out the Skyscanner engineering space on Medium. They're very good with blogging things out there. And when the results are out, they would put it there. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Thank you. Great question, though.
Thank you. Do we have more questions?
Thank you. I've been actually dealing with these things as well, and I was wondering how you have, whether you have thought about what to do with interactions that you couldn't get. So if you think about a journey of a customer to conversion, I mean, in an ideal situation, we would have all the interactions with any channel. Yeah. But in reality, in particular with the big players like Google and Facebook, they don't really want to give the data away. Did you sort of try to go around that? What did you, I don't know, think about it?
That is a fair question, again. And it's the kind of problems, again, anyone would see if they're trying to understand the value of, say, TV, ad value, again. Because, again, we don't really have exposure to all the touch points. True. So this is where we introduce fair element of randomization. However, again, we work with the experts to understand where those potential gaps are and put those assumptions in. And this is where we wouldn't know everything we need to get a complete picture. And this is why, again, for Skyscanner, there are a lot of users who don't sign in. So we, again, are cookie-based predominantly. So understanding that space, again, needs elements of randomization, learning more, what's going to happen. And as we get more expectations and test it out live, we put those expectations back into the simulated data to make that solution stronger.
Thank you. Okay, we probably have time for a few more questions.
Thank you. This is more of a business question rather than a data science one. How do you manage to communicate these wonderful results to the senior business stakeholders in a convincing way? Are they already sort of told to listen to you, or do you have a secret you can share with us? Thank you.
So very good question, and it is a core part of my job to make this understandable. So again, if it hasn't been comprehensible, please do email me and let me know if you have any tips or feedback. The team at Skyscanner have been very good in their data-driven approach and mentality. They make a conscious effort to bridge the gap, not just from the tech side to business, but even business try to meet you halfway. So stakeholders-wise, I've had some of the best there who try and understand the gaps and really bridge their understanding. And what's also really good is to understand what's happening in the industry out there, because you could see that even big labels like Google and Facebook are making their solutions, and they're moving towards this direction. So that kind of is compelling. But it's also good to know, speaking to the industry out there, that everyone is uncertain which is the best solution. So they've been very proactive and really take one of the core values to be fail forward. So test it, learn, share those learnings, and go forward. So that way it's been amazing to even invest in this, understand this. All the senior leadership have been behind it.
Sri, thank you so much for a wonderful talk. Let's give a big round of applause to Sri.